To learn more about earning college credits with study hall courses, go to gostudyhall.com or click the link in the description. It's like super satisfying to be good at something, am I right? Whether that's playing guitar, crafting the perfect meme, you name it. And often, the better you get, the better you want to be. Success opens the door to more success, whether you're a guitarist, a meme lord, or a global empire? You see, after their success as industrialized nations, countries like England, France, Japan, Russia, and the United States were determined to dominate the global industry. And that meant restructuring entire continents. By leaning into new scientific knowledge and technology, as well as wielding their pre-existing power, imperial nations were able to forcibly shape societies and environments to their vision, no matter the human or environmental costs. At the end of the day, this expansion led to new forms of global connection and huge technological advances, but also some of the worst human rights violations of the industrial era. Hi, I'm Rob Fuller, and this is Study Hall, Modern World History. During the 19th century, new technologies like the steam engine and the spinning jenny caused many countries to switch from making things by hand to using machines to speed the process up. This transitional period became known as the Industrial Revolution, and it, well, revolutionized production, manufacturing, and commerce in the late 18th to early 20th centuries. This was pretty great for these industrialized nations, but not so great for everyone else. Technology is a good friend of global power and domination, and new machines made everything cheaper, faster, and more efficient, which widened global gaps between wealthy empires and their suppressed colonies even more. But if there's one thing every empire knows, it's that you can always make more money, and money is power. By the end of the 19th century, many countries had already experienced revolutionary changes from industrialization within their own borders, like enormous city growth and the explosion of cheap and affordable goods. These earlier successes were the wind in the sails of these empires, and they were willing to do pretty much anything if it meant gaining more power, money, and influence. Take transoceanic trade, for example. Shipping silver from Lima, Peru to London was a pretty long trip by sea. You'd have to sail south in the Pacific, go around the tip of South America, and then travel back north up through the Atlantic. Empires wanted to speed this process up, so they set their sights on the narrowest barrier between the Atlantic and the Pacific: Panama. If cargo ships could pass through Panama instead of going all the way around South America, it would cut miles off the trip. Like, just a 50-mile canal could cut approximately 8,000 nautical miles off your trip. That's nearly the distance of a direct flight from Dallas, Texas to Sydney, Australia today. Those savings would make a huge difference in the safety and speed of oceanic trade, and time is money. So in 1881, French diplomat Ferdinand de Lesseps and his construction crew got things started. The French had already nailed another recent construction job, the Suez Canal connecting the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, so how much harder could this project be? Now, it's worth noting that de Lesseps was not, in fact, a trained engineer, and the construction of the Panama Canal ended up being much more than he'd bargained for. Non-stop rain and mudslides buried workers alive, and mosquitoes caused outbreaks of malaria and yellow fever. By the time the French abandoned the project in 1888, 20,000 workers had died, and they weren't even close to completing the Panama Canal. After the French threw in the towel, the US saw an opportunity to expand not only their influence, but their wallets. So they worked with the local government to restart construction. Plus, they'd already built a railroad through Panama, which would make it much easier to move heavy digging equipment and workers in while carrying excavated rubble and dirt out. Ultimately, having a sea route through Panama would make it easier to ship goods around the world and increase profits. Ka-ching! So the United States really wanted to get the Panama Canal built. President Theodore Roosevelt and the US government negotiated with the French to get the rights to canal construction, and in 1902, the US Senate officially voted to build the canal through Panama. But getting the local government on board was a bit harder. At the time, Panama was actually a region of next-door neighbor Colombia. In 1903, President Roosevelt intervened to support the Panamanian army and help them defeat the Colombians in Panama's quest for independence. Because, it's always good to get involved in other people's drama. The US leveraged their military assistance to secure a treaty with the new Panamanian government that would let them build their canal. But the treaty wasn't exactly a fair split. Not only did the treaty strip Panama of any ability to control the canal, but the US would own the canal, quote, in perpetuity. So, forever. The US didn't waste time getting started either. But first they had to figure out how to protect their workers from the malaria and yellow fever that had stymied the French. Roosevelt appointed American military doctor William Gorgas as chief sanitation officer of the construction project. He figured out that the diseases were carried by mosquitoes. So he applied what he learned about disease transmission to create water and sewage control systems to stymie the mosquito population, as well as official mosquito brigades to fumigate houses and kill larvae. Together, these initiatives virtually wiped out the mosquito population. It also brought malaria cases way down and virtually wiped out yellow fever within only 2 years. That big stick Roosevelt was always talking about? Turns out that was a personal threat to mosquitoes. And while this was a giant step forward for disease prevention and public health, yellow fever was just one of the many threats to the lives of canal workers. There was still the problem of the challenging terrain. The Isthmus of Panama was covered with thick jungle and steep elevations, and the same floods and landslides that plagued the French killed many US workers too. The landscape made operating machinery more dangerous, and workers died in accidents involving everything from dynamite to steam shovels as they tried to wrangle control of the environment. And rampant racism made things even harder for black workers, particularly those from the Caribbean. Although slavery had been outlawed in the United States in the 19th century, racial inequality loomed large across the globe, resulting in unfair working conditions for black laborers throughout the Americas, and the Panama Canal worksite was no different. White workers slept in dormitories and were paid in gold. Black workers, on the other hand, slept in cramped quarters and were paid in silver, which was less valuable, and were often given more challenging and dangerous jobs. And if they weren't productive, they could be deported or thrown in jail. But other options for paying jobs for black workers in the region were so scarce that many had little choice but to consent to this unequal treatment in the hopes of saving up enough silver to make a better life for their families. All in all, it took the US 10 years to complete the construction of the Panama Canal, costing the lives of over 5,000 workers along the way. The US officially opened the Panama Canal to traffic in August 1914, and to this day it remains one of the greatest engineering feats in modern history. While the canal was a huge step for global trade, the construction process revealed some of the costs of a more connected world. In order to dig the canal, huge swaths of land were deforested, which continue to cause flooding and water sanitation issues today. Beyond that, the canal was built on the backs of underpaid and exploited laborers in the quest for economic progress. And the benefits of the canal were mostly enjoyed by white Americans and Europeans, even though the project couldn't have happened without people of color. The racism and Eurocentrism of colonialism persisted, which was reflected in the privileges that white canal workers received and the abuses that black workers suffered. The US control of the canal also impacted how much money Panama made off their own land. In fact, once the US returned the canal to Panama at exactly 12 noon on December 31st, 1999, making good on a promise by President Jimmy Carter more than 20 years earlier, the Panamanian government began making 4 times as much money as before. But France and the US weren't the only countries looking to expand their industrialized footprint. Other countries were also racing to expand their global power with significantly more brutal results. In addition to expanding imperial influence, global colonies provided labor, raw materials, and land countries needed to grow their power and profit. But by the late 19th century, much of the world had already been sliced up and claimed by industrialized empires, with little to no regard for the cultures and peoples already living there. And that meant that other countries had to get a little more creative and a lot more ruthless if they wanted to step up their global power. This was the case for Belgium at the end of the 19th century. Belgium didn't have any colonies, and the Belgian parliament wasn't looking to add any since they didn't have the military power to keep them under control. But the Belgian king, Leopold II, didn't let a little thing like parliamentary approval stop him. Leopold set his sights on rubber. Automobile and bike industries were on the rise in the 1880s, increasing demand for rubber tires. And since the Kingdom of Congo, a large area in Central Africa, was one of the top producers of rubber, thanks to rubber-producing vines and trees in the rainforest, Leopold decided he'd just step in and take over. So when European leaders gathered in Berlin to decide the colonial status of the region, Leopold appealed for control of the Congo. Through his henchman, his hired agent, explorer Henry Morton Stanley, Leopold spent years persuading chiefs throughout the Congo region to sign official treaties with him, despite the fact that the chiefs couldn't read the documents they were signing. And to make matters worse, many of these treaties were heavily doctored after the fact. But with these very official and totally not corrupt at all documents in hand, Leopold convinced the US and Europe to recognize the Congo Free State as his personal property. This is considered the first private colony rather than state-run colonial enterprise, and it was here that Leopold set up shop for his new and improved rubber industry. But there was a problem. While Leopold had a vision for revolutionizing rubber production as a source of personal wealth, he didn't have the tools to actually do it. You see, rubber trees in the Congo were wild rather than on plantations, and the technology that would allow for the mass extraction of rubber just didn't exist. So Leopold made up for this tiny oversight with the violent exploitation and enslavement of the Congolese people. Native Congolese who resisted Leopold's will or failed to meet strict work quotas were punished with bodily mutilation. The local military, made up of native Congolese under the command of European officers, would cut off the hands of those who didn't obey the rules. And that was just the light stuff, as the other common punishment was death. Eventually, journalists and missionaries who visited the area began to criticize the brutality of Leopold's reign, and photographs of Congolese men, women, and children missing limbs circulated through the international press. Most famously, Joseph Conrad's 1899 novella, Heart of Darkness, chronicled the horrors faced by the Congolese and elicited demands for intervention amongst British and American readers alike. And in 1908, Leopold was finally forced to give up control of the Congo to the Belgian parliament. But at that point, it was too little too late. Between 1880 and 1910, 10 million Congolese people died, around half the region's population. And as brutal as the rubber industry in the Belgian Congo was, it wasn't the only place where industrialized empires brutally exploited local and indigenous peoples. France, Germany, and Portugal copied this forced labor system with similarly tragic results. By the early 20th century, nearly all of Africa had been colonized by Europeans. This increased contact with white Europeans had a lasting impact on local peoples, their cultures, and their lands. Impacts that continue to reverberate today. Thanks to colonial exploitation, to this day, the Congo is one of the poorest countries in the world, leaving it in a position to be exploited by other modern-day empires like China or the US. The influence of the United States in Panama and Belgium and Congo are just two examples of the political aftermath of the Industrial Revolution, as countries scrambled for global expansion in the early 20th century. At its best, industrialization let the world take massive leaps forward through engineering projects like the Panama Canal and the advancements in healthcare that let us take on diseases like yellow fever and malaria. But at its worst, the quest for power by industrialized nations led to some of the worst atrocities in human history, like King Leopold II's reign over the Congo and the resulting death of 10 million Congolese people. We often think of technological advances as the pinnacle of progress, something that makes human life easier. But in the 19th and 20th centuries, the advances of the Industrial Revolution allowed for increasing global exploitation. The industrialized empires of the era were built on the backs of these less industrialized colonies, and while richer countries got exponentially richer, their colonized counterparts faced even more abuse and inequity. If you're enjoying Study Hall Modern World History and are interested in taking online courses and earning college credit, visit gostudyhall.com or click on the button to learn more. Thanks for watching. See you next time.